If you're a parent with children at a state-funded school, you might be aware that there have been some changes to how relationships and sexuality education is taught as part of wider changes to SPHE, that's social, personal and health education. But how much do you actually know about what has already changed and what changes are still to come? We know lots of parents are worried about what all this means for their children. Certainly, some of the changes risk promoting an anything goes sexual ethic and the idea that a person's gender can somehow be independent of their biology. But there are lots of good educational and legal reasons why schools mustn't go down that road. And parents have a vital role in helping ensure schools make good decisions. In fact, it's sometimes easier for parents to speak out than for teachers. To help confused parents make sense of the challenges and the opportunities arising from these changes, the Christian Institute has published this, Social, Personal and Health Education, a guide for Christian parents. And joining me now to talk about it is its author, the Institute's Head of Education, John Denning. John, thanks for taking the time out to speak about this. In a nutshell, how will this booklet help parents in Ireland?
Well, what we've tried to do is to demystify the changes, to make clear what schools are required to do and what schools are not required to do. Because I think there's a risk that parents could go into school confused, not clear, and we're just trying to equip parents to know what they're talking about, to be able to go into schools and talk in an informed way. And that's really to just empower parents, to help parents to engage positively, constructively on these issues with schools and as you say, to try to have a positive influence on how schools approach these things.
So we're talking about issues, we're talking about changes. Let's kind of get into the detail a little bit. Can you give a quick overview of the sort of thing that parents ought to be on the lookout for?
Yeah, sure. And it's on the lookout for. It's not, what I'm about to say are not things that schools are required to do, but they're things that some schools might do. And those are the things to look out for. So you already mentioned in the introduction, teaching on gender. So this idea that a child, they may be biologically a boy, but they're really a girl, or vice versa.
It's increasingly common.
It is increasingly common and really concerning in terms of the impact that kind of thinking can have on a child, on their mental health, even their physical health. So that's something to watch out for, what the school is teaching on that issue. Pornography is another one. So there is a real genuine problem of young people accessing pornography on mobile phones, for example. So it's understandable perhaps that schools would want to address that. But there is a risk in the kind of atmosphere that you sometimes get of presenting that in a completely amoral way. This is a choice you might want to make, but it's not like real sex. And that becomes the emphasis, rather than really addressing the tremendous harm that pornography does, both to those involved in making it and those involved in consuming it. So looking out for what the school is teaching on pornography would be another specific issue. And then I suppose it's the whole context. It's this whole idea that's around, particularly in academic circles, that, as you say, anything goes, that all sexual activities are equally good, equally to be celebrated, irrespective of what that activity is, irrespective of who's engaging in it.
So that's the same amorality point, the moral vacuum in which this teaching might be taught.
That's it. So it is this fear, I think, of making moral judgments, of coming across as moralistic, but then that can cause people to go to the opposite extreme and actually promote an idea that anything goes. Now, that's not required by the curriculum materials, but that's in our kind of cultural atmosphere, and there is a risk of schools thinking that's what they should be promoting. But that's not what they're required to do. Yeah,
so let's be really clear about this. This isn't about scaremongering somehow. This isn't about saying that this is rife everywhere. This is just equipping parents to think, my child is being taught about these kind of things. I should probably pay a particular bit of attention to what are they being taught about this, what are they being taught about that, perhaps go below the surface a little bit, as opposed to suggesting that there's terrible teaching going on everywhere, which is probably not the case.
Yes, I mean, it's hard to know exactly what's going on, and it's hard for parents to know what's going on unless they ask. And so we're encouraging parents to ask and to get involved.
Yeah, because parents can often feel like there's nothing that they can do, John, right? Or they can often feel that perhaps to get involved actually makes things worse somehow. But you would say there's a lot of positive things that they can do, wouldn't you? And I mean, and one of the things which I think is just really, really helpful in the booklet, right in the middle, is this page around what questions should I ask. What a great section that is to encourage parents to think about, well, if I'm going to engage on these issues, here's some of the things that I might want to be asking.
Yes, well, I think it's certainly not true that doing nothing and saying nothing is a wise course of action. There are definitely people and organisations that are pushing an agenda and who want to use this curriculum to push their agenda. They're certainly not keeping quiet. And if nobody else says anything, they will just keep pushing on and keep pushing the schools and pushing the curriculum in a particular direction. So it's very important that people who have other ideas and other views speak up. And that won't do harm. I used to be a teacher, and I really welcomed parents who were interested and engaged with what their children were being taught, because if the parents are engaged, that probably means the children are engaged as well. So I don't think parents should feel that schools are going to be hostile, are not going to welcome parents who just want to ask questions, want to know more, want to make some suggestions, or even want to raise concerns. Schools should welcome that. In actual fact, that the law requires that. So the Section 9D of the Education Act 1998 requires schools to promote the moral, spiritual, social and personal development of students and provide health education for them in consultation with their parents. Mm-hmm. And that actually is reflecting what the Constitution in Ireland says as well. So there's every reason for schools to welcome parents getting engaged, parents who want to ask questions, who want to know more, who want to make suggestions and have an input.
And there might be there'll be some things in here to help perhaps Christian teachers as well.
Yes, I hope so. I mean, it's primarily written for parents, but I think it's often actually easier for teachers to talk about, well, I'm a bit concerned about the impact of this teaching. What will these parents think about it? What will this family think about it? What about these children from this religious background? How will they feel about what we're presenting? How can we find ways of making sure we are complying with our legal obligations to parents as set out in the Education Act, as set out in the Constitution? So yes, certainly there's arguments in here that parents can make, school members of school boards can make as well.
John, a year ago, Ireland had a referendum which had a very significant result because it reminded everyone that marriage is very significant. I think the result probably surprised one or two people. Where does marriage fit into this curriculum?
Well, it's a very good question, because marriage doesn't get a mention in the curriculum document.
Not at all.
Which is just shocking, really, I think. Given what the Constitution says, the state pledges itself to guard with special care the institution of marriage, on which the family is founded and to protect it against attack. Here we have curriculum that's meant to be teaching about sexual relationships, and the prime example of sexual relationships in practically the whole world, for practically the whole of history, it's not there. But that doesn't mean schools can't teach about it.
Right.
Clearly, schools should be teaching about it. It's very obvious. There it is in the Constitution. There it is in the evidence, masses of very clear empirical evidence of the benefits of marriage. And children need to know about that. Mm-hmm. And these are the most important decisions they're going to be making in their lives about their relationships. They need to know the facts, and schools should be teaching it. So although it's not there in the formal written curriculum guidance, there are very strong arguments that schools should still teach it. The curriculum, what's written down, is not a limit on what schools can teach. So schools definitely ought to be teaching on marriage, and parents can advocate for that. And we've tried to give some ideas for that, again, in the booklet.
And just think about teachers, you would think all the more so, given last year's referendum result, wouldn't you?
Yes, that's right.
Thanks, John. Well, if you're already on our mailing list, you should have already received your copy of Social, Personal and Health Education. If you're not, then you can join us. Go to our website, the.ci/sign up. If you want to order more copies, or if you want to get in touch with us about any of our issues, you can email us at info@christian.ie. Thanks for watching.
For more great content, like, subscribe and hit the notification bell.